Michael Mandelbaum is here. He's a well-known foreign policy expert. He's a professor at Johns Hopkins University. He's written a series of books about America's changing role in the world. The latest is called The Frugal Superpower, America's Global Leadership in a Cash-Strapped Era. I am pleased to have him back at this table. Welcome.
Thank you. Delighted to be with you.
What's our future?
Well, our future is a cash-strapped future. The government's obligations are going to skyrocket as the baby boom generation, that is, Americans born between 1946 and 1964, begins to retire. The costs of Social Security and Medicare will go through the roof. We won't be able to borrow all the money we need to pay the benefits that we've promised, so taxes are going to go up and benefits are going to go down despite politicians' promise that no such thing will happen. And that will affect all of our politics, including foreign policy, and its impact on foreign policy is the subject of the frugal superpower.
Okay, the president, in a speech at West Point, said no nation that has ever lost its economic vitality has maintained its position of power in the world.
Well, the president's right, and I think the president is aware of this problem, but at his West Point speech, which was devoted to Afghanistan, right, he escalated in Afghanistan, although he also set a deadline. So we're kind of caught in a trap of our own making. We've got all of these obligations, well, two expensive ones in particular in Afghanistan and Iraq that we feel we have to fulfill, and yet that's draining away resources for other foreign policy priorities and from the country as a whole.
So we shouldn't be there because we can't afford it.
I think, well, my own view is that it was a mistake to escalate in Afghanistan. That's an arguable proposition, but I think over the long run, we will not be doing any more Afghanistans or Iraqs or Bosnias, Somalias, and Haitis because we can't afford it, and therefore the public won't permit it.
And therefore we will lose our leadership position in the world?
I don't think we'll lose our leadership position in the world. For one thing, there's no other plausible leader. The Chinese aren't going to replace us. The Europeans aren't going to replace us. As the global leader, we supply a good deal of the global governance that the world gets. And what this means is not that somebody else will supply it, but that there will be less of it to go around.
The Chinese won't supply it because they don't want to play that role in the near future.
They don't want to play that role. They're not capable of playing that role. And for the foreseeable future, the priority and focus of any conceivable Chinese government will be inward. It will be on the hundreds of millions of poor people that they're going to have for the foreseeable future. I see the Chinese becoming stronger in their region, but not taking up any global leadership role.
Lee Kuan Yew, well known for his wisdom about the world, said at this very table, and he said to me when I said, what do you worry about with respect to the United States? He said, I and the rest of the world that I know worries about the inability of the United States to deal with this long-term debt.
We have not, unfortunately, shown any capacity to deal effectively with our debt, but sooner or later, the world and global markets will force us to deal with it. I don't know how this is going to happen, I don't know when, but sooner or later, there is going to be a consensus that we've got to deal with this debt, because we won't be able to borrow our way out of it and kick the can down the road. And when that happens, I believe everything in politics will change, including foreign policy. So I think Lee Kuan Yew is quite right, and there are many wise people in this country who understand this problem, but for whatever reason, we as a nation have not been able to muster the political will to deal with it effectively.
Okay, so the president calls you up tomorrow and says, come to the Oval Office. I read your book, The Frugal Superpower. I know the reality that you speak of. Now tell me what you think I ought to do beginning today.
Three things. Draw down our involvement in Afghanistan and ultimately in Iraq. Two,
and he says, before you start that direction, Professor Mandelbaum, let me remind you that Afghanistan is on the border of Pakistan. If Afghanistan becomes a haven for Al-Qaeda or any other groups and it destabilizes Pakistan, we're in a very bad place.
There is a real downside to withdrawing from Afghanistan, but I don't think Afghanistan is important enough in the greater scheme of things to devote the resources to it.
Even if it destabilizes a change in Afghanistan, a Taliban leadership destabilizes Pakistan?
Well, I don't think we have the resources to stabilize Pakistan, so I would cut back our commitments there. I would recognize that our priorities are keeping some sort of military presence in Europe and the Far East, and most importantly of all, deterring Iran in its bid for hegemony in the Middle East. And third, and this is the one prescription in the frugal superpower, I would raise the gasoline tax to European and Japanese levels. I think no single measure could do more to enhance our standing in the world and protect our interests. Now, it's also the case that, as far as I know, no elected official in the United States at any level has ever endorsed that kind of gasoline tax.
It's not necessarily the way to electoral success.
It's so far a surefire route to electoral failure, but that notwithstanding, it is, I think, the most important thing we could do for ourselves, because our chief adversaries in the world, the people who give us the most trouble, all make trouble with the revenues they get from exporting oil. So if we have a higher gasoline tax, we'll consume less, we'll conserve more, we'll diversify, and our adversaries will be weaker.
You've been having too many dinners with your friend Tom Friedman.
Well, I'm glad to say that Tom agrees with me, and he's not the only person.
Yes.
The wisdom of a gasoline tax is widely recognized, just as the necessity to do something about our entitlement
But if I was the
programs.
president, I'd say, you know, the middle class has enough burden as it is right now. There's unemployment at 9.5%, and you want me to impose a higher gasoline tax on, and of which will be borne primarily by the middle class.
Well,
and therefore, we'll look at an economic situation that I can't solve already.
A downturn is not a good time to raise taxes, it's true. But we could announce a gasoline tax to go into effect as the economy recovers. As I say, that would not only weaken our adversaries by reducing the flow of revenues to them, but it would demonstrate something that, as you mentioned, Lee Kuan Yew and others worry about, and that is the American capacity for collective action for the purpose of global leadership.